Hi everyone, I'm Kathryn Soley, and this is 1-800-CALL-KATHRYN. I'm looking forward to taking your calls today, so let's just jump right in and hear from our first caller.
Hi, my name is Sabrina, and I have a question about my life in regards to my husband and I. I want to know if I should continue this relationship with him. We have been married for 15 years. I have worked the majority of the 15 years, and he has stayed home, and I am struggling. I don't know if I should continue this relationship with him, or if he's going to see my struggle and then say, hey, I can help you out, and then finally help me out financially. We do have children together, so separating is very hard for me to think about. And that's really my question. But I would just like to know if he's going to help me out or if I should just leave. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Sabrina, that's a big one. Yeah, let's shuffle the cards and see what they have to say here about this. You know, the way that I look at tarot, usually when I start a reading, and I don't do this for the show here, but I usually give people like a 5-minute spiel on the way that I read tarot, because it might be a little bit different than I think most people are expecting. And basically the way that I look at it is that the reading is about you and your experience. And it's not fortune telling. I can't tell you about someone else. I can't tell you what to do. I think that tarot is most effective when it's a mirror back. Like it's telling you the things that you already know. And this is what I hear time and time again from people that get readings from me, is like, I knew this in the back of my mind, or this is like what I needed to hear in the moment. So I just say that because what this reading's going to be is it's going to be something for you, Sabrina, something for you to keep in mind, and not necessarily, is your husband going to show up in the way that you'd like him to or not, because that, in a way, obviously it's important to your life, but in terms of this reading, it's actually irrelevant. It's really about you and your inner process throughout this. So, and by the way, there's absolutely nothing with your question with the way. I'm just saying this because, just for everybody. It's also, I think it's helpful for people who are new to tarot to know this. I'm not alone as a reader in looking at it this way, but a lot of readers do look at it as like, I'm gonna tell you about what so-and-so is thinking. And, I was preparing for this show. I watched several commercials, I spent like an hour actually watching old 90s commercials, which is in part the aesthetic inspiration for the show of Psychic Hotlines. And a couple of them were just so atrocious to me, like so offensive to me as a tarot reader. The person giving the reading would be like, oh, your husband, when he said he was on that work trip last week, he was actually on a romantic vacation with your neighbor, and she's pregnant. It's just like, that's clearly like a scam, and it's to get you, triggered or worried or anxious or excited to call into the number. But I think things like that have really colored people's perspective on tarot for a long time. And I just don't, maybe there's a place, not for that specific type of reading, but I don't know, maybe there's a place for the fortune telling aspect. I try to do that sometimes for myself when it's like, which way should I go? Like, and it usually just seems like it just brings you back to yourself and like, what do you need to reflect on at this time? What What do you need to know in order to make the best decision? So that's the kind of reader that I am. Okay. I could talk about that for a long time. And I have talked about it for a long time, actually. On my Patreon, I have many, many hours of classes on tarot. But let's see what these cards have to say here. Okay, so we have the Three of Swords, the Death card, and the Star. And so I think we went over this a little bit last week, but actually, I don't think we've had a card like the Death card come up yet. So there are a couple cards in tarot that people know and they fear, and the Death card is the biggest one. It's like someone's gonna die, something bad's gonna happen. And the cards, they're symbolic. In tarot, cards are symbolic. That's how I look at them anyway. They're not literal. And so when we think about death as a symbol, it's change, right? It's a change, it's a transformation. And sure, the Death card can come up when we have physical death happening in our lives. But when you think about when there's physical death happening in life, there's also major changes happening. So I always like to look at it first and foremost symbolic. It's not a card to be feared. And anytime a card like Death or the Tower or the Devil shows up in a reading, I'm always going to say, even if it's someone that I've been giving readings to for like years and they know this, I just always say it because even when I'm giving myself readings, sometimes I just need to remember, oh yeah, this is not a bad card. It's nothing to fear. It's just a symbol. It's an aspect of myself that's showing up in the reading. And so the other thing is we have two cards here that are in their major arcana, Death card and the Star card. And so in tarot, you have the suits and you have the major arcana. And the suits are more like day-to-day kind of things going on in our lives. And the major arcana are like deeper soul, what I would call in my language, like soul level stuff. Like it's themes that are hanging out for a while. It's stuff that hits a little bit deeper. And so I'm not surprised to see that there's deep stuff coming up for you when you're having this pretty big contemplation around your 15-year marriage. You're considering leaving the marriage. That's a really big decision, especially with kids involved. 15 years, it's like, of course, that's going to bring up deep stuff. And even, the card that's in the suits here, the Three of Swords, in the Rider-Waite Coleman-Smith deck, which I stopped using as a reader a couple of years ago because I think I might have said this in last week's episode, but it just allows for too much projection, I think. And sometimes I think it skews a little bit too negative and sometimes skews a little too positive. And I prefer a more neutral deck so as not to terrify or delight in like what's like a word for that that's like arouse or delight, something like that in a imbalanced way, my clients. But anyway, in the Rider-Waite Coleman-Smith deck, the Three of Swords is another kind of famous card, or it's a card that people are familiar with. It was featured in that movie called, what was it called? Oh, The Love Witch. But anyway, it's a card that is depicted with a heart with three swords through it, and so it can often be associated with heartbreak. But the swords, and so that also, I'm like, well, duh, of course, that's showing up in this reading. But the swords, are related to the element of air, and they have to do with the way that we think. And so a lot of times the kind of fear around the suit of the swords that comes up, I think, is more about we're creating, it's like a suit. When it's out of balance, it's a suit of anxiety, the swords, because it's like our minds are just creating these big stories and these big fears and these big anxieties that are not necessarily based in reality. The cups are that's more emotion. So that's more like our feelings. And so I find it kind of like odd in a way that heartbreak is present in the swords card. So that's why I think of it as more of heartbreak that's in the mind. So I gave a lot of kind of background before even starting the reading here. So, but looking at the reading overall, change. There's some sort of change, some sort of shift happening. This is not surprising. And like I said, I don't look at these readings as like, let me tell you, you should leave your husband or you should stay. Like, I don't know. I think as you're listening to this, check with yourself and like, what is it that I actually want? What is fear? What is desire? And what is like actually the path that I'm meant to be following at this time? What is best for me in my life at this time? And I have to ask too, separate from the reading, have you talked to your husband about this? Because, I know it's a 1 minute long message that you left, so I don't know the whole story of your guys' history and marriage and whatnot. But I did hear you say, should I wait for him to see that I'm struggling? And I think you said something like that two different times. And so that makes me wonder, have you actually said this to him? Have you actually had a direct and clear conversation where you're just saying, this is how I'm feeling, this is my fears, this is really weighing on me, and I'm not sure what to do. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Or is this something, actually having a conversation about it is really important. A lot of things can be worked out with proper communication, as long as both parties are willing to uphold their part of the conversation or their part of the deal, so to speak. Sit with these cards for a moment here. So I get the sense that there's a lot of grief here, that there's a lot of sadness, and I wonder if this sadness has been with you in different ways throughout this relationship, and if it goes back before the relationship, if the patterns that you find yourself in this relationship are something that is being replicated from relationship with a parent in some way. A lot of times people can find themselves, I don't know the whole history of your relationship, but if you're finding yourself in a situation where you're putting a lot, you're giving, taking care of everything, doing so much and not getting much in return. Is this something that you did as a kid growing up? Was this something that a parent kind of asked of you without asking? As a child, were you waiting? When is mom or when is dad gonna notice that I'm struggling? When is mom or dad gonna notice that I need help? And maybe there were times when you asked for help in some way and that was not received well. And these are just kind of guesses that I'm making here, but is this a pattern that's, some sort of grief, a sadness that you've been carrying with you for a long, long time? If that's the case, then now may be the time to call or to look at this pattern and my feeling is that if you start there, of course, first having a conversation with your husband about it, and also perhaps even getting a marriage counselor involved first, too, of having someone like a third party that can help mediate the situation, can be really helpful. But as you're listening to this, if you're in a place where you're like, it's not even worth it to talk to him, I don't even want to go to therapy, you might already be at the point where you're just done. I don't know. But if you're not, then I would say, do what you have to do to try to work it out before leaving. But, just observing, I think you may get a lot out of just observing, like, what is the sadness that I'm feeling? Where do the roots of this go? Because yes, if your husband is really oblivious, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that's hurtful, of course. And that's something that you don't want to live with. I think we all want to live with loved ones who notice us, who are in tune with us, who see, oh, Sabrina's struggling today, like, let me, and I'm feeling okay, so let me try to pick up some of the slack around the house. Let me try to see if I can bring in some more money, But at the same time, this can be, it's hard to see it in the moment, because in the moment, and I can hear in your voice in the call that this is like weighing on you heavily. And it's always hard in the moment to see things clearly. But in hindsight, you may look back at this and be like, that was a great opportunity for me to be able to see this pattern that I've been engaging in for my whole life, so that whether you decide to stay in the relationship or move on to something else, once you've engaged in that pattern, you've looked at it within yourself, you're less likely to repeat it in your next relationship or in your current relationship going forward in the future. Because it always takes two. It takes, in a relationship, there's two parties that contribute to unhealthy dynamics. And of course, there can be someone who's like more, causing more problems in the relationship than another. But there's always going to be something that like keeps that person hooked in some way. Like, why do I keep getting myself in situations where I'm giving to everybody and I'm not getting much in return? Like, is this a pattern that you have at work too, or other areas of your life, friendships, things where you're giving, caretaking, and maybe not telling people, like, I'm really burnt out, I don't want to take this on. Maybe you fear saying no to people. Like, if this is a pattern, then it's a good time to look at it. And what I want to say too is I haven't touched on this yet, but we have the Star, which is one of my favorite cards in the deck. I try not to play favorites, but the Star is such a sweet card. And when I think about the Star, I can't help but see it together with the card, the Tower. And the Tower, it's not present in this reading, but it's a card kind of similar to the Death card. There's a lot of change and upheaval happening. And the Star card comes immediately after that. And so I always think of the Star card as peace and rest and rejuvenation after a difficult period. And so this is a very optimistic card to have in the reading. So you're in the shit right now. Like, you're in the stuff that you don't want to be in. Things feel rough, things feel difficult, scary. Probably a lot of like deeper emotions are being stirred up in ways that you might not even be fully conscious of yet. But remember that it feels like this is on the horizon as you work through these themes that we've been touching on, represented by the Three of Swords and the Death card here of I don't know. See, the thing is, I don't know precisely what it is in your experience, but there's some sort of pattern or some sort of sadness or grief that's being carried. But as that gets worked with, on the other side, there's like this deep breath. There's that putting down of the weight, putting down of the burden, and there can be a rebuilding that comes after that. So let's pull an oracle card for some guidance with these themes here. So we have the Myth card. And when I see the Myth card, you know, what comes up for me in relationship to this reading is what are the stories that the myths, the stories that you're telling yourself about yourself? What sort of belief systems do you have about who you are, what you're worthy of, what's possible? Because, you know, again, whether you stay in the relationship or not, you may have belief systems about or stories about yourself, about what is possible, what's the potential for you in relationship to others, whether it's romantic, whether it's with friends or work. Are there ideas that you have that are like, no one's going to take care of me, nobody pays attention to me, nobody sees me when I'm struggling, nobody cares about me? And again, if those sort of stories are there, I feel that. I feel that, and I bet a lot of people listening will resonate with that to some extent, because I think that's a pretty common underlying belief system or feeling that we might have, and it's usually, until it becomes conscious, we think we don't have that. So you might want to do some rewriting of the stories that you have about yourself and about what you deserve, what's possible for you in your life. And you know, it's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. And if you ask for help and it's not received, you might want to ask yourself, is this someone who really is able to care for me in the way that I want to be cared for, the way that I deserve to be cared for? All right, Sabrina, that's what I have for you. Yeah, I wish you the best on this journey. Relationship stuff is really like one of the hardest things that I think we go through, at least in the West or in more somewhat stable civilizations, because it hits so, it gets the tummy churning, it gets the heart fluttering, and just gets everything. It can go so far back into childhood in ways that we don't even recognize. It's just, it it hits deep. So I wish you the best on this journey. Okay, my camera had a little hiccup there, so we're back. Let's hear from our next caller.
Hi, Kathryn. I hope this message finds you. I'm Angel, and I'm calling because I'm having gut issues, and they've been taking me down for the count. I don't know what's going on, but I've basically just become debilitated, and I've been reaching for plants like yarrow and other really wonderful plants in my vicinity, and also I've just been kind of at a loss, physically and also emotionally and spiritually as to what's going on. I am in a pretty tumultuous time post long period of mourning my dad, and also just trying to navigate surviving in this capitalist world as an artist, and just facing realities of finances, and I need to get a job and all of these things, and in the midst of all of this, I feel like my gut has just physically changed, my body has changed, and so I guess my question to you is really just I wonder, I'm just curious about how to proceed, or what my body is trying to tell me about what I need. Anyways, thank you. I hope you have a great day. Bye.
Okay. All right, Angel. What a great, I don't know if that's your real name. I never know people calling in if they're giving their real names or not, but what a sweet name. Okay, Angel. It's like what you call, it's like being called sweetie pie or something, It's like what you call someone that you love. You sound a little like a little sweetie pie, a little angel, your voice. I always wonder how people's names affect, I don't know, it's like chicken and the egg. Did they were they given that name because the parents intuited this is the energy of my child, or do you grow into the name, or is it both? My name is Kathryn Sarah Soley, and it means purity, princess, sunny hillside, and I hope to fulfill those that name meaning. So let's see what we have for you, Angel. Okay, so we have the Sun, the King of Cups, and the Six of Pentacles. So, before I even get into the reading, I have to say I'm not surprised to hear you're having gut issues when you say that you've just gone through a long period of grieving your father, I'm going to assume that means that your father's passed away. Grief is very hard on the body, and our guts are deeply connected to our emotional state. As I think everyone has experienced it sometime or another, where you might get sick to your stomach when you feel a strong emotion. And if you're feeling a strong emotion for a long period of time, you're having a long period of grief. And you didn't specify here. I'm making the assumption that your father passed away, but it could also just be, the lot. You can lose your parent when they're living too, and that is grief as well. But I can, of course, after a long period like that, your body's going to take a hit. And then you also are talking about another added layer of, as you said, trying to make it as an artist in a capitalistic society, which I'll tell you, they don't make it easy for you to do. They don't make it easy to make a living doing literally anything. They really just want, So I just want to say, it sounds about right. It makes sense that you would be having some physical ailments after a long period of grief, and then being met again with just stresses of life. So what we have here, I'll speak a little bit about each card individually. So when I see the Sun card come up, this is a card from the Major Arcana, and to me, this is the card of optimism. So every card in tarot has multiple sides to it. It has its healthy, integrated side, you could say, and then it has its less healthy, kind of neurotic side to it. And when the Sun is in harmony, it's just this part of ourselves that is in harmony. It's like we're really enjoying life. We're optimistic. We have an optimistic attitude about things. We're happy about where things are heading in life. And so my guess is that a period of grief, stress about what are you going to do work-wise, how are you going to support yourself, how are you going to be able to live a life that is fulfilling to you. If you're an artist, it's hard to live a life where you don't get to make art. And it's hard to get into the space of making art if you have to spend 40 hours a week doing drudgery or something that you're not intrinsically in alignment with. It's not impossible, but it makes it a little bit harder. And so I can imagine with those things going on that it might be hard to have an optimistic outlook in life. And I can sort of get a sense from hearing your voice. Maybe I'm making a projection because your name is Angel as well, assuming that is your real name. But that you may be an intrinsically optimistic person, I get kind of the sense that is your nature, even if you've not been in touch with it for a very long time. Maybe you haven't been in touch with it since you were a kid. But this may be a good time to get back in touch with that part of yourself that is more optimistic, not blindly so, not idiotically so, because a lot of people are like that. You see that a lot in kind of spiritual, new agey type people, communities where there's this type of optimism that it's sickening. It's just based on delusion, I'll say. It's a little judgmental of me to say it's sickening, but I've been in those communities enough I've earned the right to say that, I think. But, it's based on delusion, and that type of optimism, it's not real optimism, There's a deeper kind of optimism that is true. It's to me, it's the truth of reality, which speaking of, this world where they make it really hard for people to make a living doing anything, let alone something that is in alignment with us as beings, I think beating the optimism out of people, making people feel hopeless and helpless and pessimistic is all like a part of that. And so it can be hard to get in touch with the true optimism that life always is looking to harmonize. It's always looking for equilibrium. It's always looking to better itself. So optimism. The King of Cups, I really actually enjoy this card a lot. It's a card that over the last 5 or so years shows up in a lot of my readings in a way that makes sense. I was going to say, it doesn't surprise me that this card's coming up, especially in the last several years, because the King of Cups, so cups are related to the emotions. And the King of Cups is this part of ourselves that has emotional maturity. So there may be a storm, like waves all over the place, all around us, but the King of Cups is that part that rides the waves. He lets himself feel the ups and downs of the emotions, but he doesn't become attached to them. He doesn't say, I am sad, I am happy. It's like, I'm experiencing sadness right now, I'm experiencing happiness, but I am beyond these ups and downs, these highs and lows of the emotional landscape. I am more than that. Not beyond it, but more than that. I'm feeling it at this time, but I am not that. Like, he doesn't become identified with the feeling states. There's a part that's always kind of able to see, having these ups and downs, these waves of emotions don't affect the King of Cups' ability to see reality with clarity. So, yeah, we're living in like a very tumultuous time on the planet where all the time we're being encouraged to have these really like big emotional responses all the time, man. So anyway, with the King of Cups coming up in relationship to this reading, it's like, I can imagine with gut issues that if you find yourself on a roller coaster of emotions, if you find yourself in like peaks and pits all the time, that will do a number on your tummy. Like that's gonna upset your gut. And so it may be of great benefit at this time to see like, what are ways that I can support myself in finding more emotional stability, more emotional maturity, really. And then with the Six of Pentacles, Pentacles are related to physical world experiences, so things like finances, health, the way we show up in the world, work, things like this. So again, not really surprising to have this come up in the reading. With the Six of Pentacles, in relationship to this reading, I'm thinking about giving, receiving, There's something kind of similar about these ups and downs, highs and lows within the physical world experience. There's something about attachment there, again. So I would just say overall, the feeling of this reading is tapping into that optimistic part of yourself, tapping into the emotionally mature part of yourself, and also being aware of your relationship to your attachments that you may have to certain, the physical world being a certain way. It may end up looking a little bit different than you imagine. In my own experience, I was an art major in college, a painter. And so while I was in school, I was thinking, I was like, it was before social media where it was a little bit easier to make a living as an artist. So I was like, well, I'm probably just gonna have to work as a server for the rest of my life and just do my art, on the side. And that's, not the worst life, I think. But things just may turn out differently than you imagine them to at this time. Your art may take a different turn. You may find yourself finding a job that you actually enjoy, that doesn't suck your soul, and you're able to work 40 hours a week at it and still have a big reservoir left over after work and on the weekends to dedicate to your art. There's just a lot of different possibilities that can happen and so with that Six of Pentacles, it just feels like not getting too attached to your life is going to look a certain way. And don't compare yourself to friends or to people that you see online and how they're living their lives, because as an artist or as someone who's not following the traditional path, your life's gonna look different. Even trying to compare yourself to another artist or compare yourself to someone who is following a non-traditional path, it's not gonna look like theirs. So just try to stay with, yourself and just see how things unfold. So let's pull an oracle card here for some guidance with these themes going forward. Water. So when I see the water card come up, I feel like it's just sort of an exclamation point on the emotional aspect. So with this energy that we talked about with that emotional maturity, I'm talking a lot about it, and then it's how do you find that? How do you find that? It can take, it does take really years and maybe lifetimes to have a certain kind of emotional mastery. But there's a lot of things that we can do to help support ourselves to have more emotional stability. Meditation is a big one. When I teach classes about plant medicine, about poisonous plants, I encourage everyone to meditate, and it's one of the things that I think it's the homework that people do the least. There's such a big resistance to it. There's such a big resistance to just sitting quietly. People think that they're bad at it because they're thinking the whole time, and it's that's why you're doing it, because the mind is so talkative. And if you're noticing that you're thinking, you're doing a great job. You're noticing my mind is very chatty right now, and there's many different types of meditations that you can do. There's lots of different ones that you can try out, but having the mind be more quiet, it automatically creates more quiet in the emotions, but it also helps you to be able to see, oh, here comes a wave. It's a key integral part to emotional stability is mental stability. They go hand in hand. And so meditation there's nothing that works like it. There's absolutely not. People will say, and you might say, oh, art is a meditative practice for me. And I know that it can be, but it's not the same as just sitting and doing a sitting practice. So that could be something of benefit. And then also just, psychotherapy, finding a good therapist, which is hard because most therapists are not, I would say 99% of therapists are not very skilled at what they're doing. And I've had good luck with Hakomi psychotherapy, Hakomi. So there's certain keywords you can look when you're looking for therapists. Hakomi is a good one. A word to look up, transpersonal, is a good word. Body-centered can be a good word, but it's encompasses a lot of different things. the work of Peter Levine. The last year I've reconnected with his work and find him to be really helpful. And he's actually, he focuses a lot on if there's physical ailments, if there's physical pain, he focuses a lot on the emotional aspect to it. And so that could be helpful for you as well. So, all right, Angel, that's what I have for you. I hope that your gut gets better. I've had digestive issues throughout my life as well. And through a combination of emotional work and lifestyle changes and diet changes, my gut's in really good shape now. So it might take some experimentation, but don't neglect any one of those three. Those are the three important pieces. Some people will only focus on the diet, but then they're extremely stressed out, and actually focusing on the diet makes them more stressed out, which makes their gut issues worse. You have to find this sort of balance of, are there foods that are causing these issues? Is there an emotional issues that are causing it? And are there habits or things in your life that are potentially contributing to these issues as well? Okay, Angel. Again, I love that name. I love when people have sweet names like that. Okay, let's hear from our last caller. We're going to take one more caller today. Let's see. Is that it? Okay.
Hi, Kathryn. I'm calling because I could use some insights and clarification when it comes to career and money matters right now. I feel like this year I've been through a lot of upheaval when it comes to this area of my life, and I'm in a place where I really am not sure what the next move I make should be. I have had a few opportunities come to me, some offers come my way, but they don't feel necessarily like the best use of my gifts or skills. And then I have some kind of pie in the sky dreams that I feel in a sense that I'm holding out for. But it's definitely creating this restlessness, and there's a little bit of doubt about whether I should be more in an active phase of going out and looking for things, experimenting with things, trying new things, or allowing for things to come to me. If I should be clearing space for new opportunities with money and career and with what I really truly want to do. So thanks so much for listening. Thank you for what you do. And I appreciate you. Bye-bye.
That's sweet. Thank you. Okay. So work stuff slash sounds kind of life's purpose stuff as well. Pie in the sky, as you say. Is it really pie in the sky? Or are you just conditioned to believe that? I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because in the last reading I said it's hard. It's true, it can be. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible. Let's see what we have for you here. have a lot of major arcana cards this episode, haven't we? See, I already forgot what were the cards from the last reading. This is like my mind that does the readings is different than even the mind that I'm using right now. It's like, so within 10 minutes, I've definitely forgotten the reading for the most part, unless there's something about it that really stood out to me. See, oh no, yeah, I can't remember. I know we had 2 major arcana cards in the first reading, but now I can't remember what we had. What did we have? I think we didn't have. Anyway, oh no, this is embarrassing. Anyway, doesn't matter. We have more major arcana cards here with the Emperor and the Fool. We also have the 4 of Cups, and let's start by talking about, ooh, yeah, I like this reading. So, just thinking where to start here. When I look at this reading, I see the Emperor and the 4 of Cups kind of together, and then the Fool he's looking off. He wants to go a different direction. And that again, it makes sense based on what you called in about, that you have some opportunities that have been offered to you, but you're not really sure if it's actually a good fit. And then you have, and that's, I see like here maybe, and then the Fool is the pie in the sky type of stuff. And you know what, let's start with the Fool, because that word, Fool, has a lot of connotations to it. And if you're not familiar with tarot, I mean, a fool is like, it's not a good thing, right? But I personally have a very close relationship with the Fool card. I feel like I have a lot of the Fool in me. And so when I think of the Fool, like obviously the shadow aspect of the Fool is the part of ourselves that like has no idea what's going on, and we're just like, just, you know, gonna fall into a pit of trouble because we have no idea where we're going. We're just bumping around and just kind of mindlessly end up in situations and we don't know how we got there, and it can be very foolish. But when the Fool is in a healthy place, then the Fool is just open to whatever is coming at him. The Fool is just following the path as it's laid out before him. Even though he doesn't know where it's going, he trusts the path where it's taking him. He's in touch with synchronicities, he's in touch with his intuition, and he's just following the path without needing to know where it's leading. And when that happens, it seems to work out in his favor. And that's been, you know, the case for me in my life a lot, where I make a lot of seemingly, from the outside, wild, weird life choices. And sometimes from the inside, I'm like, why am I doing this? But I just have the feeling of like, yes, this is the right thing to do. I don't know why. And then maybe after the decision is made, it might take me multiple years to look back and be like, yeah, if I hadn't, you know, moved to that place, I wouldn't have done that training. I wouldn't have been exposed to that person. I wouldn't have gotten to have that experience, you know, things like this. So, you know, with the Fool card, it's like, can you just trust your path at this time? Can you just trust what's being laid out before you? You know, and thinking of this example of work and the Fool too, before I started doing this type of work full time, I had a lot of various odd jobs in my teens and 20s that basically every job I've ever had has contributed in some way to the work that I'm doing now. You know, I worked as a server for a long time, and I feel like that really helped me get comfortable talking to people. talking to strangers. I also did Uber and Lyft driving, like when those companies very first started in like 2014 maybe, or 2015. And that also got me comfortable talking with strangers. And I think sometimes people are surprised to find out, because I talk so much for a living. I do tarot readings, I teach classes. I think people are surprised often to find out that this is not something that I have always been good at. You know, I used to get really bad anxiety if I had to give a presentation for class, like would not talk to strangers at the grocery store. Now I'm like very friendly, usually, unless I'm in a bad mood. But, you know, the last job that I had before switching to full-time, it was kind of like my in-between job, was I was tutoring Chinese kids in English online. So I had to get comfortable being on camera and teaching on camera. And even, you know, I start off most of my classes like waving like this. That's something that I learned to do through those tutoring jobs, because you have to use your hands to help the kids understand, you know, more of what you're saying. But all of that is to say that, you know, in the moment it was like, why am I doing this dumbass job? Why am I like, this job sucks. This is like so boring. It has nothing to do with what I actually want to do. The people that I'm working with, like, they don't understand me, you know, all of these different things. But in hindsight, they ended up all helping me build skills that I needed to do the work that, you know, I'm really, I was gonna say destined to do. It sounds very like grand, but just the work that I'm led to now that is very fulfilling. And yeah, so with the Fool there, it's like, can you just trust, even if it seems like things aren't quite where you want them to be right now, maybe you do take one of these jobs that doesn't really feel in alignment, because like you said, I think you said you have these pie in the sky dreams that you're holding out for. It could be that it's not quite time for that. So that's something to be aware of too. You know, for years I tried to teach meditation classes. I tried to like all throughout my 20s, teach classes on dream symbology and the Bhagavad Gita and like different things like this, and would hardly ever get any signups. These were in person. It was kind of before people were doing stuff like that online. And I think it just like, I wasn't quite ready, like it wasn't quite the right time. But I knew it's what I wanted to do. And there are things even now that I want to do, but I can feel like it's not quite the right time. Like even with this, the 1-800 Call Kathryn, for a really long time, I thought, you know, it'd be fun to do like a call-in show, but I didn't really know how it would look. And it never felt quite right until like all of a sudden it just, within like 2 weeks, I got it going basically and shot the first episode and ordered the green screen. Spoiler alert, I'm actually not floating in space. This is actually a green screen. But yeah, can you just trust the path as it's unfolding at this time? And then we have, you know, the Emperor card here. And when I see the Emperor card, to me, you know, I think of this aspect of ourselves that is grounded and in, what's the word? Not rulership, but damn it, there's a word. What is it? That's, well, for now, I'll try to approximate, but it's, you're in a role where I really want that word. I know someone listening knows the word that I'm thinking of, but you're in control, you're ruling over your life in a way that is not in, you know, see the thing, the Emperor card is hard for people sometimes, kind of like the Fool. People have a snap judgment, oh, the Fool is bad. People also have that about the Emperor, and the reason that they have that is because our examples of rulership of the Emperor are totally insane, like really bad kings, bad emperors, you know, so to speak, that we have in rulership positions in the world at this time. But, you know, an emperor that was healthy would be, you know, have all of the people in the land's best interests at heart, would want the kingdom to be growing and flourishing. He would be doing so selflessly in service to his kingdom, in service to humanity, as opposed to in service to himself and in service to the dark serpent of the soul, like meaning like greed and all of the greed, addictions, like just that stuff. But in terms of one's own life, it's like, can I be in control? Can I be in a good leadership position for myself? Can I be, there is a word, if I remember the word, I'll flash it down below here. But can I be that for myself? Even if I'm not quite in this so-called pie in the sky dream place that you're holding out for, in whatever you're doing, whether it's your ideal kind of work situation, or you're temporarily working somewhere that isn't really very fulfilling, but can you still kind of show up for yourself and live in dignity? I can't quite, this is going to drive me crazy. I can't quite find that word. But then we also have the Four of Cups. And when I think about the Four of Cups, we had earlier in a reading the King of Cups, which there's like an emotional maturity and emotional stability. And the Four of Cups is kind of similar. There's like this, a four is a square, and a square has to do with groundedness with the earth. And so when we think about that, it's like grounding the emotions. There is also with the Four of Cups a certain emotional stability. So can you also, throughout this process, have a certain like okayness of, okay, well, I might not be exactly where I want to be right now, but that's okay, because I trust the Fool. I trust the path that I'm on, and that things will be unfolding in their own way. And what I want to say too is you got to be careful with this, because people will take this sort of energy and be like, the universe will just take care of everything for me, and then they'll just like sit on the couch like picking their nose, playing video games all day, like being like, well, the universe will take care of, and that's like, you have to also engage with the path. The way that synchronicities work, when I'm traveling, when I'm out in the world, when I'm doing new and unusual things, there's a lot more synchronicities that are possible. The days when I'm just like staying home, reading a book, doing the dishes, there's synchronicities are still always present, but it's not quite the same as when I'm like out and engaged in the world. And so you can't just like not do anything. And we need a certain amount of like bumping up against the world in order to get the ball rolling, I think. Unless we get to a point where it's like we're just so stuck in our ways that it becomes unbearable. And it makes me think of something that Chogyam Trungpa used to say about the cocoon, that we find ourselves in this cocoon, and the cocoon starts out and it's like cozy and warm and safe and familiar, but then the cocoon starts to get kind of dank and sweaty and stinky, and sometimes people prefer to stay in their comfort zone as opposed to like breaking out of the cocoon and going into new explorations. So let's pull an oracle card here for some guidance with these themes going forward. Oh, nice. So we have mysticism. Yeah, this is a fun reading. Fun for me as a reader. Yeah, when I see that mysticism card, I feel like it is emphasizing the more spiritual aspect of the Fool. And it could also be emphasizing the more spiritual aspect of the Emperor. Can you zoom out a bit and see the bigger picture? Can you zoom out and see? Sometimes you can't. Again, sometimes you have to go forward into the future to understand why now is the way that it is. So, all right, that's what I have for you. I would say, don't worry so much about it. There's nothing in these readings that I'm like feeling it's particularly heavy or difficult or anything like that. It just feels like the only thing that could be maybe a little bit more of a challenge about this reading is that it may be asking you to step in a little bit more fully into yourself, into your potential, into what's possible for you in this life. As you said again, you said that the pie in the sky that you're holding out for. Why are you holding out for it? Does it not feel ready, or are you not sure of, where that's going to go? Yeah. I feel excited for you. Yeah, I hope it all works out. I think it will. And it may work out really differently than you were expecting. So thanks for calling. All right, so before we close for the day, this is a longer episode. But anyway, let's do one more card for everyone. This is the card of the day. Something for everyone to keep in mind today, this week. Three of Pentacles. So when I see this card come up for our card of the day, what comes to mind to me is there something new that you want to learn? Is there something that you want to share with others? There's like two sides of this card. I mean, there's more than two sides, but there's two sides that are coming up for me in this moment. One is there a new skill? Is there a new book you want to read? Is there a language you want to learn? Is there something you want to study? Just something new in your life, something that you want to build, something, some project you want to start. Is there just something new that you want to learn, something new that you want to do at this time? Why don't you do it? Go ahead and do it. The other side of this, is there something that you have in your heart, something you have in your being that you want to share, that you want to give to the world? Why don't you do it? So that's our card of the day. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Please keep calling in. Again, I'm enjoying getting to hear everybody's calls. It's been really interesting. I was just noticing yesterday that the types of calls that I'm getting are really different than my normal readings. I think because they're anonymous, it feels like people are sharing a lot more intimately than I think they do when they're not anonymous. And so I feel, in a way, actually honored that you guys are sharing yourselves with me. And again, I can't get to all the calls for various reasons, but at least, for now, I'm trying to get to as many as I can. And yeah, a lot of the questions that we have on the show seem to be a little bit deeper kind of themes. But I also want to invite people, if you ever have more kind of fluffy stuff, or just that is also welcome on the show. I'm happy to answer all different kinds of questions. Although I know that I'm probably best at the deeper kind of stuff. But yeah, call in 641-632-2727 and your call may be featured on an upcoming show. If you want to learn how to read tarot yourself, or you just want to dive more deeply into the philosophy, into the symbology of tarot, I have a whole series of classes on my Patreon, 30 plus hours of classes. There's about an hour-long class about each card in the major arcana, all the way from the Fool to the World. And then I have a 4-part series on my Patreon, an Introduction to Tarot series, where I talk about all of the ways that I read tarot, like what's going on behind the scenes, how to start a tarot practice yourself. And all of that is available for $5, which is really, I think, a very good deal. And there's actually even more classes on there beyond the tarot. There's classes on herbalism, on symbolism, on the Book of the Dead, on self-care, on how to make herbal smokes, herbal aphrodisiacs. All different kinds of stuff is on there. And also through there I do send out a monthly herbal care package. So each month I send out a little, usually a flower essence or a flower essence blend delivered to your door. And if you sign up for that tier, you also get access to all the video classes. And yeah, and if you want to get a reading yourself, a personalized individual reading, I do offer those through my website as well, kathrynsoley.com/tarot. And yeah, please share. This is only the 3rd episode. I'm still really getting the ball rolling on this show. So if you enjoy it, please share it. Share it with people that you think would enjoy it. Share it on your social media. Help me get the word out, because I would love to see this spread. And yeah, okay. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.